Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Now, right at the end of May, when we can still cling on to the last shreds of spring, but with summer to come, is, I think, the best moment of the year. The jewel garden is taking on its summer clothes, the intensity of the colour from the allium purple sensation and the mauvey blue of the iris sibirica, against the electric yellowy green of the hops and the sambucus and the euphorbia and the other splashes of colour coming through. All that is signalling that summer is coming. Now, of course, what it means is that the spring flowers are largely done. And I will be moving the tulips on and replacing them with flowers for later on in the year. Whilst I'm nursing an injured knee and undertaking light duties at home, Carol is out and about, paying a return visit to our inexperienced gardeners, Dan and Dom, and helping them to create a delicious and productive vegetable plot.
Before you know where you are, you'll be out here picking stuff all the time and eating it in your beautiful cottage garden. What could be nicer?
Carrie Thomas has the National Collection of Aquilegias, and we visit her garden in Swansea to celebrate this glorious flower.
There's no end to the variations. I think for the rest of my life, I will still be enamoured of them because there's always something new to chase after.
And you don't need a garden to make a dramatic floral statement.
When we started the first set of baskets on the ground level, and people started noticing it, and we went from there to the chimney tops.
And I shall be reviewing my herb garden and adding in some more favourites. Throughout April, this pot was flowering with 3 tulips, ballerina, caro and burgundy, but they've all done now. And what they now need to do is to slowly die back so all the goodness can go into the bulb, hopefully for next year's flower. And also we're tying up an expensive and nice pot, so I want to take these out and replace them. So, I can lift the whole thing out. Now, they may just pull out. I don't think they will. I'm going to have to leave them out. And this is a tricky part of the process. But if you try and work them out the pot without damaging any of the top growth, it's really important that this is allowed to die back naturally. And if it gets a good baking in the sun, if we have weather like we do today, that's the best way to ensure good tulips for next year. There they go. And you can see there's a lot of root on that. And we're going to pop those in there. And that's a good bulb. And you can see the little bulbils either side. Now, those little ones will not produce any flowers next year, but will get bigger over a period of 2, 3 or 4 years. So these go in the pot, and I've got a plan for those later on. Now, this lovely pot is now free and not tied up till next spring, so we empty it completely out into there and basically start again. And what I'm going to plant in here are dahlias. This is Arabian Night. You want a nice, big, strong plant and a big display. The soil I'm using for dahlias is very different to the soil I was using for tulips. Tulips love really good drainage, and they don't need much, if any, nutrition. It's all in the bulb. So that had a lot of grit in it. Dahlias, on the other hand, like a much richer soil. This is our homemade potting compost, and it's 30% sieved garden compost, so it's rich. It doesn't matter what you're growing. It is important, if you're changing from a spring to a summer display in a container, to change the soil. Because even if it's the same kind of plant, the compost will be exhausted. This is a plant that I've grown from cuttings, and I keep my dahlias for years and years. I'm going to pop that in just below the surface level, and then we just pack around it. Now, I'm using dahlias, but there are lots of other plants that you could, and I have used for the same effect. Lilies do really well in pots. Really, it's a question of maximising the value and use of a lovely terracotta pot. So whilst it's being occupied by one display, there's another coming along in a much cheaper, less glamorous pot. And that will now stay and occupy this space until November. And of course, November is when we plant tulips. So the cycle just keeps going round and round. And you can use that with containers with a whole range of plants. It's a form of bedding, really. Now, we have a garden and the bedding is part of the display. But Jerry O'Brien in West London doesn't have a garden. But he does have a fantastic display composed entirely of bedding plants.
I've been now a landlord 30 years. And it's been a wonderful time. It really has been my life. I'm from a lovely village at home in Ireland, in County Clare, Gunalow. We're lucky, I suppose, we grew up in the countryside, you know. We had one field, and it was always a meadow. And that was just glorious. The bees, the butterflies, and all that. And I thought it'd be lovely to have a little bit of this here in London. I'm going to get some plants, some hanging baskets, just to give it a little bit of colour. I wish I had a real garden. I wish I had some grass under my feet that I could feel. But I think this meadow makes up for it in a big way. Yeah. Love begonias, you know, and there's about 3 different types there. We have the pink, the yellow, the orange. And then we have the Sophinia, petunia, we have the lobelia, and the fuchsia, but I love fuchsia as well. You see them together and it just gives you a lift. It really does. Every time I look up and look at them, it just does something to you, yeah. When we started the first set of baskets on the ground level, people started noticing, and I thought, isn't that lovely? Then you look up a little bit further, and you said, well, I think there's room for another lot. And we went from there to the chimney tops. We can't go any further than that. I'm always looking to see if there's any spot, anything we could put an extra pot or a window box or a hanging basket, and I really don't think there's any space left. There really isn't. We have the conservatory downstairs, and that used to be just an old garage. And I've got about 200 hanging plants in there. Mostly ivies and ferns hanging, because they survive better. We don't have a garden as such outdoor, so we brought the garden indoors, you know. We have to water twice at night time, about midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and again at 5 in the morning before the sun comes up and gets at them. And then we have to go on the chimney tops with our hose. When you water, you smell, you get, it's a fantastic feeling, it really is. It's just glorious. Well, we've won some great awards over the years. We've won the Brighter Kensington Chelsea scheme, 11 years running. We won London in Bloom. London in Bloom, 3 years. It's terrific, isn't it, to get recognition for what we do.
I have to say that I love the exuberance of Jerry's display. It's a kind of celebration of life, and the more of it, the merrier. Now, you can see I've dug a trench, opened out the clump of tulips, and spread them out along. And it's really important to give them a sunny spot with good drainage. Tulips come from sun-soaked mountainous hillsides in Turkey and that whole sort of Central Asia area. And whilst they can be covered with snow in winter, which then melts and gives them water, they are baked by really hot sun in summer. So maximum sunshine, maximum drainage. And if you've got any doubt about how much drainage to put in more. And then next March and April, they'll start to come up and flower and give you cut flowers for the house. You're not wasting anything. Neither the terracotta pot, the bulbs, or even spare bits of ground. Now, these tulips and all the other cut flowers that I will add in throughout the summer are growing cheek by jowl with vegetables and shrubs and trees and climbers, and that's all part of the cottage garden mix, and I think that gives it real charm. But this week, on our visit to Dan and Dominique, which she's been doing all year and will continue right through to the end of the growing season, Carol is focusing just on vegetables.
Dan and Dom have spent the past few months working hard to create their dream family garden. And at the centre of their plan was an area to relax. Last time I was here, we created cottage-style borders around the lawn. Since then, Dan and Dom have been out and about, gathering together their favourite veg plants and seeds, and getting the frames of their raised beds ready. And today, we're going to fill them. Today, it's all about veg. It's looking phenomenal. It really is.
Good. Obviously, the chickens were here before. We've left the gravel. Is that going to be a problem with anything that we're growing?
No, not at all. I mean, the gravel's going to provide drainage. I'm glad that you followed my suggestion, made these paths nice and wide, because access is all important. So last year, when you had your raised beds, you fill them full of compost.
It seemed like the easiest way to do it.
Which is what a lot of people do, but of course, this year...
Yes, we have taken your advice. We've gone and got what looks like an enormous amount of topsoil.
The whole advantage of topsoil, as opposed to that bought-in compost, is that it's alive. So all those microorganisms, all those worms will get to work and really make your soil fertile. And it'll go on then year after year after year. Okay. But then you've also got some muck.
Yeah, so we've got a few bags of muck left over from when we were doing the borders.
Before we decide what to fill with what are you going to grow? Because different crops need different conditions.
Yeah. Leeks, beetroot.
Beetroot, yeah, love beetroot. Carrots we've always done before.
All those rooty things, the carrots and the beetroot, parsnips perhaps, all those kind of things, love good free-draining soil, but they don't want high fertility. They don't want muck, fresh muck, anywhere near them, because it makes the roots fork. So what else? The usual stalwarts, to my mind, are courgettes.
Yeah, definitely.
2 plants will give you ample yields. They need high fertility, so lots of muck underneath them. Okay. For salads and onions, these 2 beds are going to need some muck in underneath and then loads of that really good topsoil. So all that remains is to start filling these beds up. So after you.
Okay.
Great stuff.
Each raised bed will have at least 70% topsoil. This will keep its structure as it contains clay and rock. Compost is made purely from organic material, and recycling theirs from last year will lighten the mix. For some of the hungrier crops, we're adding a good helping of manure. Oh, lovely stuff! And making sure it's all mixed together before planting. So this is your really fertile bed. Brilliant, loads of muck underneath and this lovely substantial topsoil. The first courgette. And just bung it down and firm it in out round where the edge of the pot was. Yeah. And what you can do is you can make a little furrow like that so that when you water, all the water is going to go down into the roots.
Okay.
Now, this is your climbing bean.
Right.
So it's coming right at the back here, and I'm going to put 4 in, I think. The whole idea is verticality. We'll make use of this space as well. So I'm going to plant these quite deep because these are fairly big beans. Right. Whereas your lovely little ones can go along there.
Yeah.
Not too deep because it's only a little seed. Bob's your uncle. On to roots.
Right.
My vegetables, I'm gonna chop down my vegetables. I love you most of all. My favorite vegetable.
So, perfect position for carrots. Full sun, lovely free draining soil and no muck. I like sowing my carrots sort of 2 little rows at a time. When you come to thinning out, you want to do it with as little disturbance as possible because carrots smell and carrot fly can zoom in. And once you get them in your carrots, that's it, you've had it. In a couple of weeks, you'll see them germinate, and about that time, you can start thinking about sowing another couple of rows.
So a couple of these double rows of carrots, they are going to be enough for us for the year?
Depends how much you love carrots.
Depends how many we eat.
Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't it? But I love salads. Can we do those?
Yeah, yeah.
I brought you these few plants of rocket that I grow in modules, just to start you off, and perhaps put them just on one of these edges. And with salads, it's hugely important to keep on sowing because you don't want great big old plants. You want nice fresh stuff all the time. Planting distances aren't crucial. You can mix some flowers in here, put in marigolds, anything that's nice and open and will attract pollinators for things that need it. Before you know where you are, the whole garden will be flowering, fruiting. You'll be out here picking stuff all the time and eating it in your beautiful cottage garden. What could be nicer?
Great, yeah.
Dan and Dom's veg plot promises to be a productive and beautiful space. Something that'll give the entire family enjoyment and nourishment throughout the year. Sowing and harvesting regularly will ensure it plays an important role in their family garden.
I realise that if you haven't done it much before, vegetable growing can seem daunting. But don't be put off, because now is a really good time to start growing veg, even if you've never done it before. Sow some seed and you'll have a delicious harvest before very long. Even if you're not growing vegetables at all, here are some jobs that you can be getting on with this weekend. Now that Chelsea Flower Show has finished for another year, it's time for the Chelsea Chop. This means cutting back clumps of summer-flowering herbaceous perennials by between 1/3 and 1/2, which will stagger and spread their flowering season, as well as giving you extra texture and varying heights. Cordon tomatoes should be pruned regularly now by pinching out the side shoots that grow very vigorously on the angle between the main stem and the leaves. By doing this, you're concentrating the plant's energy into the trusses of fruit, which are slowly beginning to develop. At this time of year, a lot of us have a mass of seedlings ready to go in the garden, but the garden isn't necessarily ready to receive them. But don't let them get pot-bound. Take them out of the plug or the pot and check to see the roots are not too constricted and yet nicely formed. Pot them on into a larger container. It doesn't have to be too big, just enough room to let them grow on for another few weeks. Then, when the garden's ready, you can plant them out where you want. There's certainly no room to add many more plants at the moment here in the Jewel Garden. But spaces will appear and the plants will be ready as and when they do. But for the moment, who would want to replace these lovely aquiledias? This really is a beautiful, intense purple. And then they do crossbreed terribly easily. So a pink one, which shouldn't really be here in the Jewel Garden at all, it's popped up, but I haven't got the heart to remove it. And that's what aquiledias do. They pop up all over the garden here. And wherever possible, we leave them and let them do their thing. And they're very easy. They grow in any soil and almost any condition. But Carrie Thomas in Swansea is much more disciplined about her aquiledias because she has a passion for them and breeds dozens of beautiful new varieties.
I'm Carrie Thomas, and I've got the national collections of aquiledias in the UK. I've been collecting since I started gardening, but particularly the last 20 years, I've really gone in for all of the different types of cultivars, and that culminated in having enough to have the national collection. I just love the daintiness of the flower, the way that it's put together, very different and very extraordinary. Aquiledias probably comes from aquila, in Latin for eagle, and it's said that it's probably to do with the spurs and the hooks on them, which look rather like the talons of an eagle. And of course, the common names, grandis bonnets, is easy enough to understand, and our native columbine comes from dove. It actually looks like a circle of 5 doves in the flower. Aquiledias are found in just about all of the Northern Hemisphere, from Japan to North America. And the good news about aquiledias is that they couldn't care less where they grow. They're very easy in just about any type of soil, as long as there's not sort of standing water in the winter. And perhaps best of all, they're slug-proof. The bumblebees here are pretty cheeky. They can't be bothered in going in the business end if there's a shortcut. This one has bitten a hole through the spur, and look at that, they're getting the nectar directly from the end of the spur. For somebody that likes breeding, aquiledias are a gift, because not only will just about all of the cultivars mix and match quite happily between them, but you can actually get the species to interbreed, and that's quite unusual. Well, I've got several ultimate goals when I'm hybridizing. In this case, I want to get more yellow into these double forms. Sometimes I may go for the height of the plant, whether that's high or low. I might go for scent. I might go for the different coloured leaves that we can have. So first of all, I have to choose the right mother plant. So if I use this one, definitely no pollen on, so I can just start to tease away the petals. We don't need those. That's for attracting the bees. And we're going to be doing the bees' jobs for them. Then I need to take off all of the stamens, the male part of the flower. And then when I've done that, what I'm left with is just the female part. But I'm ready now to choose the father plant. And when I've got that pollen, I need to transfer it onto the female parts of this plant. And this is where I'm just going to dabble the ends of the stigmas, the female part, into the pollen. That's beautiful. And when the seed is set, then I need to go around and collect it. This is the result of seed from, about 30 different parent plants. And from this, I select the ones that I'm going to keep and the ones that I want to breed from and the ones that perhaps I've got enough of and I'm willing to let go. I rather like this one. I've got a nice, strong yellow, plenty of petals, and I rather like all of these long spurs coming out of the back. And, yep, I reckon this one's going to go back into my collection, so I'll definitely be keeping this one. There's no end to the variations. I think for the rest of my life, I will still be enamoured of them because there'll always be something new to chase after. And I do warn that if you get drawn into aquiledias, you may never stop, and I don't think I ever will either.
Now, in the jewel garden, the allium flowers are looking fantastic, and that's what we grow them for. But here in the herb garden, another allium is elephant garlic. We grow it because it's got these huge bulbs, which are very subtle and delicious. But what's noticeable is they are now developing flower heads. And this is a bad idea. you want to remove any flower heads on garlic because the plant will take the energy away from the bulb and put it into the seed. So we can salvage the bulbs by cutting off the flower heads before they develop too much. In an ideal world, you won't harvest garlic until the leaves really start to turn yellow and die back. Very similar to the tulips. The herb garden here, which was only made last year and is based around 4 raised beds, has changed our growing of herbs at Longmeadow dramatically because we've always had trouble with Mediterranean herbs. It's very wet, heavy, cold soil. And in winter, thyme, sage, rosemary, marjoram has struggled and often died. And now with these raised beds, which have got a huge amount of grit and stone and terracotta to improve the drainage in them, they're thriving. And the thyme bed is fantastic. We've never had such good thyme. In this bed, I did have parsley, and now I'm going to plant out 2 of my favourite herbs. The first is French tarragon. You can get French or Russian tarragon, but French tarragon is the one to grow if you're cooking with it. The taste is infinitely better, and it's wonderful with chicken or with fish, but it's not hardy. So I dig it up and bring it into the greenhouse over winter, and once it starts to grow back and it's been hardened off, it can grow out into the bed. And simply plant it in good, well-drained soil in a sunny position. It's sitting in cold, wet soil, which does most damage to Mediterranean herbs. And we'll just plant that in the ground. And that will grow nice and big and give us plenty of material to cook with. This is lemon verbena, and it has such a lemony fragrance. Just a few little leaves with boiling water poured on it, and you have a refreshing, delicious tea. So we plant that next to the tarragon, and that will be bought in winter as well. Of course, if you live in the south and it's warm and it's sheltered, you may well be able to grow these plants over winter. But if, like me, you have heavy, wet, poorly drained soil, and it can get pretty cold here, then it's not worth the risk. Take it in and protect it over winter, and then plant it out once the risk of frost has passed. And also, because it's been growing inside, you've got really nice, strong growth, and it makes fabulous tea. That's it for this week. Bye-bye. Come on, Nigel. Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Now, the writing garden is beginning to take shape. It's only a year old, but it's getting a touch of maturity, which is exciting. We've had really wet weather here at Longmeadow for the last 2-3 weeks. And whilst that's a bit miserable for gardeners, the garden has become really lush. And that lushness is a beautiful green, and the white is a kind of cloud that floats on top of the richness of the green. And you've got the Allium Everest, the wonderful white of the foxgloves, and then in turn the roses will come through and the clematis. But the constant factor is the green in all its different shades. Well, the combination of this time of year and all the rain, and critically, the fact that my knee seems to be better, so I'm off crutches and I'm off a stick, means that there's lots to do and I can crack on with it. Go on. Where are we going with this one then? This week, Joe goes behind the scenes at the world-famous Glyndebourne Opera House, where the gardens have been designed to complement the music.
We try and cater for lots of moods, so that when you come out of an opera like The Marriage of Figaro or something and you're buzzing and you're excited, you want an exuberant, exciting planting scheme.
Rhododendrons are looking at their best at this time of year. Carol meets a man from a dynasty of growers and learns about the rhododendrons that have shaped today's popular varieties.
There's 900 different species, ranging from these great big trees to tiny little alpines. You could spend a whole lifetime and never see half of it.
And I'll be working in my cottage garden, where the aesthetic beauty of flowers sits easily with the very practical virtues of vegetables. The jewel garden, as the name suggests, is planted to create as intense and rich colours as we possibly can. And at the moment, the irises and the poppies and the delphiniums are working towards creating that effect. And in fact, it does go on building till August, September, when it's at its absolute peak. But the cottage garden has a very, very different feel. We've got growing fruit, vegetables, shrubs, annuals, herbaceous perennials, all mixed up cheek by jowl. And the ruby chard looks great. We've eaten it all winter, and now it's bolting and it's become a flower with a magnificent red stem. Now, this bed has had wallflowers in them, a really good buttery yellow. Wallflowers are actually a short-lived perennial, but I grow them as a biennial, and it tends to be the best way to grow it. And a biennial, you sow the seed 1 year, and it will flower the following year. So now is the perfect time to sow wallflower seeds and grow them on, plant them out in the autumn, and they'll flower next spring. But they've gone, and they need pulling out to make space. If I left them in the ground here, they would go on living, but they would get very lush, and you'd have masses of foliage and not much, if any, flower at all. So it's a law of diminishing returns. So by pulling them up, I've got the best of them, and I'm creating space for other things. Now, these are the plants that I've been making space for. I've grown these first 3 from seed, and in fact, this is just half the plants we got from 1 packet of seed each. So very cheap, the most economic way to fill up a garden. This is a yellow chard. This is purple kale, both edible, of course, but very, very decorative. I've got a tray of borage, herb, and I've bought a couple of packs of cosmos, and this is a pink mix, and the delicate pink will work in with the roses. So I've got a flower, herb, a winter vegetable, and then a really dramatic, bright-coloured vegetable which will work through from summer into winter. Just got a few chard. They're quite brittle, the stems of chard. You have to be careful not to snap them, but they're good, healthy plants. Now, these will only reach that sort of height when they bolt. So to start with, they'll be relatively low, and the mature height will be no higher than the top of the hedge, really. I love the way that the roots are yellow of this too. And you can see that has actually got a little bit pot-bound. So if you tease them out a little bit, just by breaking them, you stimulate fresh root growth. That's enough. Chard is the perfect cottage garden plant because it's going to cope well with different conditions. You can harvest it from summer right through to the following spring. It looks lovely. It's good for you. What's not to like about chard? Don't plant it too close together. So the key to it is to let the roots grow because it will have quite a big fleshy root, and that's what keeps it going over winter. There we go, that'll be fine. If I put the cosmos in, you buy them in these plastic plugs, you just push the bottom out. Now, before planting that, you can see it's got a large bud on the top and then smaller side buds coming off. So when you buy cosmos like that, just pinch out the top bud. That will encourage more side shoots and you'll get many, many more flowers. So We'll pop it in there. It's so wet, the soil is really sticky. And finally, a profusion of kale. See, that is a beautiful plant. Even if it wasn't edible, it'd be great. And this is really robust and will come into its own after the first frosts, when that tenderizes it a bit, and it's a really, really good vegetable, and will hold its own in here amongst the flowers all around it. So we've got this funny old mixture in the border, but it's great for small gardens because you can have a bit of everything that you fancy and have the garden looking really beautiful. Now, Joe is starting out on a new series of garden visits to prestigious places with gardens attached that play a very important role in the whole experience of their use and management. And his first visit is to the Opera House, Glyndebourne in Sussex, as they get ready for the new season.
Thousands of people flock to Glyndebourne every year to see some of the biggest names in opera. And with just 3 days to go till the opera season starts, there's a real sense of excitement here. But it's not just the singing they come here for. The gardens are as much a part of the experience as the performances. Kevin Martin and his gardening team have worked their socks off to get the grounds ready for the opening night. Over the last few months, they've planted over 7,000 bulbs, produced 6,000 plants from seed, and spread 50 tonnes of mulch across the 20 acres of grounds which are separated into several distinct gardens. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, Joe. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Fantastic gardens. But it must be a real challenge gardening here because you've got such a range that you've got to deal with.
Well, it certainly is. It's just the areas are so varied, they're so different. I mean, working in the jungle garden here, so we use large, big plants. Some of the areas we're using finer plants.
And it's all to complement this amazing opera.
Absolutely.
It's blasting out behind you.
As you can hear now, exactly, yeah. So that's another added bonus of working in this garden, actually.
Yeah. Do you need a hand?
Yes, please, yeah, we'd love a hand.
More bananas?
More bananas.
Where are you going with this one,
Up
then?
through here, Joe.
Through the jungle?
Through the jungle.
With all this singing in the background, does it inspire you to garden? How does it make you feel?
Oh, it's great. I mean, I think everyone has a piece of classical music they love. And since working here, I've sort of recognised a few more bits. In fact, it's my favourite opera, Eugene Onegin, we can hear now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it does inspire you. I mean, it's incredible to be working in a garden with live stream music, really.
It's been an incredibly mild winter, and this exotic garden here shows it, doesn't it?
The greatest thing about having a mild winter at Glyndebourne is that we do get echiums through the winter, which makes a big difference. I mean, we do actually grow them in the greenhouse and plant them out, and we'll get flowers probably the third of the size of that. But if they overwinter, then they're just magical.
Lovely. Right, what's next? Oh, yeah. These are lovely borders, eh?
Yeah, very important, this one. A lot of people use this to enter the opera house, so we've got to make sure it's looking its best right way through the season.
So what do you want to do with these, then?
We're going to do a bit of staking here.
So with the volume of people involved, does it affect the plants that you use?
It does. We have to try and soften up the edges of the path using, stuff that can cope with a bit of bashing. Hardy geraniums, we can cut them back.
Yeah.
I find when we do cut them back, good drink of water, and they're back again within a few weeks.
Yeah.
We use the nigella quite a lot as well, which seeds everywhere. There's also a bit of drama in here with the Aeromuris, which, again, are an amazing plant.
Do you feel at this time of year, do you feel like a lot of pressure?
The time they spend on the detail with the productions, you feel that you've got to compete with them,
But you can't let the side down, that's for sure. So are you happy with that?
I am. That's going to do us proud.
Yeah, that's going to come be nice as it grows through there. Kevin and his team work very closely with John Hoyland, the garden's advisor and one of the masterminds behind their design. Gardens are looking great.
Thanks.
I have to say, I love this exotic border here.
It's great. The idea behind this border was it's just before the foyer to the theatre, so we just wanted to have something exuberant and exotic and a bit jungly, which just hints at the excitement that's going on in there.
But there's a lot of different themed garden areas. Why is it being designed like that?
What we try and do is that we try and cater for lots of moods, so that when you come out for the long interval, because there's an hour and a half's interval here, you might just be buzzing just because you've seen something jolly and exciting like the Marriage of Figaro, and you want an exuberant, exciting planting scheme. But then there's tragedy sometimes that you come out from, and so you might just want a quiet walk through a shady woodland or around the lake or through a meadow. You might just want to be calm and quiet. So we try and create those different atmospheres.
And it's not just the audience who enjoy the gardens. Whilst on breaks from rehearsals, the performers, backstage crew and musicians do too. How important are the gardens to you two, as far as your performances are
Fantastic,
concerned?
wonderful. We're really de-stressed in the nicest possible way.
You can take yourself off onto a lovely walk.
We go down by the lake.
Go and look at the lilies and
look at the lilies and get
the
all
mayflies and
artistic about it.
I think they're rather an oasis of calm because we're working inside in a subterranean, darkened space when we're in the pit. It's very cramped and it's very noisy. And it's really nice to come outside and see the gardens and to smell the flowers and see the reflections in the water and just sort of normalise again.
Nearly done?
We're there, nearly done. We'll never be completely done until the actual curtain goes up. Yeah. But we're nearly there. We've got a bit of deadheading to do.
But you're pleased?
I'm very pleased, yeah. Another season up and running.
I think the garden looks fantastic. Right. They've just got to work on the opera now.
Exactly, yeah. Well, we can hear it. There's a few tweaks they've got to do, but not many.
Well, I'm no opera buff, but certainly that makes me want to go to Glyndebourne, even if it's just to see the garden. Now, the vegetable garden has enjoyed the wet weather. The chard is bolting like it is down in the cottage garden, but there's still plenty of leaves to eat, and I'll take those out sometime over the next week or so. Potatoes, this is Charlotte, the second early, looking fantastic. Touch wood, be harvesting those in about 3 weeks' time. Done a little experiment here with the broad beans. Directly sown 2 different varieties. This is Wickham and Eleanor's Express, and these were sown in April. And you can see they're both well covered with flowers, and they'll be developing pods in the next few days, ready to harvest by the end of the month. There's some Eleanor's Express at this end of the bed, which I sowed in pots in January. And they are now producing small pods like that. And then I've got Aqua Dulce, which I sowed at the end of autumn. And these have got much larger pods. That's a really good sized one, so you can see the difference in size of the pods. Now, traditionally, if you want early broad beans, you do sow them in autumn. The problems I've had in the past is if you've got frost and snow and mice, they can really suffer. But this year, because of the mild winter, they've done well. And you can see the difference. If I open this pod, you've got a tiny little bean in there, whereas if I open this one, that bean is as big as I would ever want it. There's the difference in size of bean. And you can't beat just broad beans, cooked, a little bit of oil, perhaps some lemon, perhaps a little bit of mint. Absolutely delicious. These radishes mark the spot where I sowed rows of parsnips, and radish and parsnip grow well together. And you can see that the radishes are absolutely ready for harvest and growing well. And the parsnips are coming up through. There's a parsnip. There's parsnips coming up there. And they coexist quite happily. And these, swish them under a tap, and they'll be delicious. And by picking them, of course, letting light, air and nutrients go to the parsnips. And then I'll sow more radish for more succession and probably another crop after that. The trouble at the moment with all this wet is that my heavy soil is too wet to sow direct. But it's really good weather to do some planting. I'm going to plant out some leeks that I sowed in plugs a few months ago. Date on the year, 26th of February these went in. And you can sow them, as I often do, which is in clumps. And you sow some seed into a plug and then pot it on. And it doesn't matter if it's 1 seed or 5 seeds. They then grow as a little group and you harvest them as a group. Now, the spacing, when they're planted like this, can be about 8–9 inches apart. And I'm not trying to plant them too deeply, because what I'm trying to produce are young leeks. Whereas if you plant them individually in holes, they're sunk down. In fact, only the tips stick out, and that excludes light, and you get a bigger, stronger leek. And some will say it's sweeter, but I tend to eat these young. And so it doesn't matter that they're growing up above ground level. Over the last few months, Carol has been looking at the plants that have shaped and defined our gardens and the growers who have passionately developed them. And this week, she's gone up to Scotland, looking at beautiful rhododendrons.
Can you imagine our gardening landscape without rhododendrons? Yet it was only a couple of centuries ago that they were seldom or never seen. And even when they became more popular, they were exclusively the preserve of the moneyed classes. Now they've become one of Britain's favourite shrubs. Ken Cox is the latest in a dynasty of plant hunters. For 3 generations, the Coxes have been growing and hybridising rhododendrons here at Glendowick.
The reason that we got into rhododendrons in the first place was that my grandfather was working in London and he met Reginald Farrar, who was the most famous plant hunter of the 1920s.
Oh, well, my hero, yeah.
And Farrar asked my grandfather if he would like to go plant hunting with him in Burma. And
Doesn't get much more adventurous than that, does it?
They were certainly going out into the unknown. And they will have travelled through rhododendron forests out in Burma.
Yeah.
But what was really important was that when he came back and looked at the valley here, he thought that looks a bit like what he'd seen in Burma.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty sure that without the combination of the seeds and the place to plant them, we wouldn't be into rhododendrons and that Glendowick wouldn't be world famous for rhododendrons.
But what is it about rhododendrons that you love?
I think it's the diversity. I think the fact that there's 900 different species, ranging from these great big trees to tiny little alpines. You could spend a whole lifetime and never see half of it.
Yeah.
And then, from those 900, people have bred another 28,000 odd
And
hybrids.
counting.
And counting. Yeah. And so it's just a lifetime of interest. You'll never get bored, rhododendrons.
I should say that's magnificent. This is what you think of when you think rhododendron.
I think it is absolutely that, and it illustrates everything which is fantastic about rhododendrons and the problem, which is, who's got a garden big enough to put that in?
Which rhododendron is it?
This is a rhododendron called Sappho that was bred in the late 19th century, and it was a real breakthrough to get this colour. There's no wild species that's got this enormous purple splotch in the middle of a flower.
And that's quite a feature on many rhododendrons now.
But they never told anybody what the cross was, because they didn't want any of their rivals to make the cross. So we still don't really know how on earth they managed to breed this thing.
This is ravishing, isn't it?
This is a truly revolutionary rhododendron, I suppose, called Rhododendron yakushimanum. It was introduced in the 1930s from Japan, from this volcanic island called Yakushima. And my grandfather was one of the first people to get this when it came back from Japan. And then in the 1950s, people started hybridizing with it, and they found that it produced a whole race of little bun-like, low-growing hybrids, perfect for small gardens. So it took rhododendrons away from just from the aristocracy in their stately homes and put them into normal-sized gardens. It grows in really windswept, incredibly cold conditions, and it's a fantastically hardy plant. You can grow it in Germany, you can grow it in North America. The most popular parent of rhododendron hybrids ever.
And totally, totally beautiful.
It is lovely, isn't it?
The air's just filled with this intoxicating perfume. This is what I call an azalea.
This is a deciduous azalea. Deciduous azaleas are the hardiest members of the rhododendron family, and they drop their leaves in the winter. So they're brilliant if it's a bit windy. They're good at the seaside, they're good at salt spray and all that kind of thing.
So they're tough old plants.
They're really tough, and they don't tend to flower until end of May and into June. So if you've got a garden that suffers from late frosts, if you're in an inland river valley, then they're a really
so
good
they
choice.
continue the season, and they're tough. Most of the antecedents of these plants came from America.
North America, yes, up and down the east coast mainly. And then there are really only two other important species of deciduous azalea. Luteum, the scented yellow one, that comes from Turkey. And then there's one from Japan called Molly. So all those azaleas ended up back in Europe, and then people started hybridizing with them. And there is one challenge left, really, which is that the scented ones are all pale-coloured, and there's very little in the bright oranges and the reds and whatever that has any scent.
Yeah.
So what I'm working on, I'm not that far away, is to get scent into the really big orange and red azaleas. I think when God invented azaleas, he said it was either or, and I'm maybe trying to
You
prove
want
that
all
wrong.
three? You want scent and fire and size?
At the same time.
So an azalea that has absolutely everything. I'm sure you will.
That's what we're working on.
Now, of course, the reason why I can't grow rhododendrons here, and in fact, you couldn't possibly grow them on chalk or limestone, is they need ericaceous soil, a pH of around about 6 to 5. But if you do want to grow them and you're on chalk, you can grow them, of course, in a container with ericaceous potting compost. Now, you can see that the cricket pitch has changed from a great field of crocuses and narcissi to long grass. This is now a meadow. And it won't change much for the next month or so. Then as it dries back, we'll cut it and mow it, and let's start that cycle again. Now, you may not have any long grass in the garden, but here are some jobs you can be getting on with this weekend. Now, if you've got nettles or comfrey growing in the garden, here's an easy way to turn them into a very good plant feed. Both of them are made in the same way. Gather up as many leaves and stems as you can and cram them into a bucket. Nettles are good for encouraging strong leafy growth, while comfrey is ideal for developing healthy flowers and fruit. Top the buckets up with water and then put them to one side to gently stew for 3 weeks, preferably well out of the way because the comfrey will develop a truly vile aroma. Now the nights are growing warmer, it's a good time to plant out pumpkins and squashes. And if you haven't grown any from seed, you can still buy young plants. Give them the richest soil you've got in a very sunny site, spaced at least 3 feet apart. And plant them at the center of a shallow depression, because this will hold water, and you should water them well every week for the rest of the season. Climbers like roses and clematis are starting to grow vigorously now at the same time as they're flowering. And this can mean that the flowers can be hidden and flop down. So carefully untangle long new shoots and tie them into support with soft twine. And this will both protect them and also enable you to enjoy the flowers at their very best. This part of the garden we call the dry garden because the soil is very thin and it's very sunny. But earlier this spring, I dug all the plants out, Gave the soil a bit of a revamp, some extra compost, some more grit to make the drainage even better, divided the plants up and replanted, adding a few bits and pieces. And now it's started to own the space again. Now, obviously, when you revamp a border, you keep adding to it over a period of months. And whilst I was at Chelsea, I fell in love with this. This is Lysimachia Beaujolais. And what I'm looking for is this beautiful burgundy magenta colour, which picks up with the geranium thyme and also the aquilegia we've got there. So this hint of plum and burgundy, which we're adding in to the borders. And I thought if I could get this in something like that. It likes full sunshine, really good drainage, plus quite a lot of moisture. Well, this part of the world, moisture is a given. Dry garden, it gives it good drainage, plus good sunshine. So the perfect place for it. I've got a couple more. Put this one in here. There, I think that the foliage of those two will work well together. Now, although this is a gorgeous plant, it is short-lived. It's classed as a short-lived perennial, like a wallflower, best treated as a biennial. And I've heard that you can collect the seed and sow them, but we'll do that later on when the time comes. So this is a luxury, an indulgence. It'll only perform for a year or at most two, but a really beautiful year or two. Well, that's it for today. I will be back here at Longmeadow and I'll be joined by Joe and Carol from Gardener's World Live in Birmingham. So, until then, bye-bye. Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. Now, there's only one word to describe the garden at this time of year, and that's lush. With all the rain we've had and the mildness, and even the occasional sunshine, everything has grown hugely. And that lushness is lovely, but it's swamping a lot of things, and now it's time to start cutting back. This weekend, it's also Gardener's World Live in Birmingham, and that's a great opportunity to get ideas and find some wonderful plants. In answer to some of your emails, Carol is looking for good plant combinations that will work in difficult areas of the garden.
Eryngiums will cope with mountainside and seaside alike. They've got spectacular flowers, and they really give a bit of drama to your dry, sunny situation.
Joe is looking at how different designers have taken the same brief to produce very different show gardens.
It's about detailing and design, and it can make or break your garden.
And I've decided to abandon my asparagus and replace it with brassica. And as well as that bombshell, I shall be planting up some large pots to give me colour right through into winter. First, I need to thin out and cut back these dual garden borders. We want to keep the display going from April right through into November, if it's a good autumn. And that will involve introducing new plants. And you've got to make space for that. And also, we've got a bit of a strange weed problem here, because this allium, Purple Sensation, has taken over and is growing everywhere. And I very often pull up about half of them to stop them seeding, which is a kind of a shame because the seed heads can look lovely. And alliums will seed prolifically, which, of course, for the first few years is fantastic because you're getting more plants. But you've got to be very careful for what you wish. but it can become a problem. And this year, I'm actually going to dig out a lot of the bulbs because they're just getting too dominant. Can you see that? You've got this orange stain, and it's terrible for staining your clothes. So be careful. Really difficult to wash out. And also, I shall be cutting back this geranium. The ratio of flowers to growth is diminishing and not giving enough return. So we get in there, cut that off. When you're cutting back, geraniums in particular, but any herbaceous plant you want to regrow, and this applies to the oriental poppies in particular, cut back hard. Go right to the ground. That will let light and air in, and the regrowth will be nice and vigorous and will come back surprisingly fast. Now, if I get a fork and gently tease into the ground, not too vigorously, I'm not double digging it, I'm just seeing if I can get some of the allium bulbs out. These can dry and sit and be planted in September or even October without any problem at all in another part of the garden. We cleared the other side of the path a day or two ago, so that is now ready for planting. When you're topping up a border, you need to start with the big plants first. So this is a gladioli, plum tart, and the bulbs have been planted in a deep water aquatic basket. And the beauty of that is the roots can grow through the holes into the ground, and then when winter comes, the whole thing can be lifted and put into storage so that they won't get frosted. Gladiola is relatively tender, and I'm going to put that there because the flowers, which have got a lovely plum burgundy sort of colour, will rise about that height, so above the hedge. They need to be fairly near the front. This is zinnia scarlet red. Zinnias will go on flowering from July right into autumn, if you keep deadheading them, and they like heat and plenty of sunshine. That can go in there. We can put them in groups, maybe groups of 3. You notice I'm not planting any. I'm not going to plant anything until I'm certain that it's in the right place in relationship to everything else. This cosmos is orange cosmere. Lovely, rich colour, a real essential dual garden plant. Now, there's no point in putting a plant like this, which will only grow about 2 foot tall, in the middle of the border. So the taller stuff in the middle, and then you add the smaller annuals in amongst them. Now, this is all familiar stuff in the sense that these are plants I've grown in these borders for years and years, and I love them. And I like just tweaking them and altering them slightly with a few additions. But basically, it's the same idea every year, and none the worse for that. However, at Gardener's World Live this year, Joe is looking at the show gardens, particularly at the hard landscaping, to get fresh ideas and new inspiration.
Gardener's World Live is a showcase for up-and-coming designers, and for what I've seen so far, they've certainly not let us down. From the outlandish to the conventional, there are design elements here for everyone. And this year, there's a particular group of gardens that have really caught my eye. These gardens form part of an ambitious project called Metamorphosis, a design journey, headed up by the highly acclaimed garden designer, Roger Platts. Roger often sits on the judging panel at Gardener's World Live, but this year has set 4 emerging designers a unique challenge. Roger, how does this competition work?
It's all about creating a show garden for the first time for these designers, and with a limited range of materials. They've all been given the same materials to work with.
So how did you choose which materials you were going to give them? There's quite a lot of grey paving and grey walling here.
There is, and interestingly, I suppose I'm a little bit known for doing more traditional style of gardens. I wanted to give them materials which they could do something, perhaps, if they wanted to, a little more contemporary. The interesting thing is they've all done different things with these materials. They've used them, but they've used them in all different ways.
And every garden's got to have a water feature designed into it. That's a bit mean, isn't it? Because they're the hardest part of the garden to get right.
Maybe that's why I put it in. It was a bit mean of me. And I think they've learnt a lot from that. And now, you know, in the wider world, they should be creating much better quality water features.
So it's a great opportunity for these designers, then.
It's been a wonderful opportunity to create a garden for show, and they've just thrown their heart and soul into it. I think it's been a wonderful success.
Really interesting to see how designers have used pretty much the same materials and created very different gardens. This is a very formal space, drawing the eye right through the middle towards a large water feature at the back. And I like the sense of humour that the water's pouring into the buckets there. As far as the paving material is concerned, I'd like to see a little bit more contrast, maybe chop it all up, create more interest. But I do like the vibrancy of the planting here. This garden has a very strong rectilinear design. You can see the rectangles all interlocking in plan form, but also I like the way that actually it steps up towards the back. Good use of levels, and that boundary really does enclose the space. The one thing I just wish it had was more height in the planting here in the foreground, because that would give a nice sense of enclosure to the garden as a whole, and from here increase the depth of field and actually make it feel bigger than it really is. Out of all the four gardens, this one has put the whole garden on the diagonal, drawing the eye over into the far corner, and it gives a very different dynamic feel to the space as a whole. And I also like the sempervivums planted in lines. What they've done here is cut the clay pipes, which are actually an ingredient that they have to use, sunken them into the gravel and planted in there, and that breaks up the line between the paving and the gravel itself and gets some plants into the middle of the space too. I wish this garden had one more thing. Another purple hazel planted right here. At the moment, there's two of them. The eye bounces between them. With three, it'll create a lovely flow as it goes round and round. Well, this is the garden that won the competition. It's designed by Jo Jemison, and she's done a fantastic job for this design of this tiny 6 metre by 6 metre garden. These spaces really are very small. It starts off with this pathway, which already shows ingenuity and innovation to me, because she just laid the paving slightly apart, put a bit of gravel between the two. It's great for drainage and also starts a lovely rhythm that runs through the garden, all the way through this paving and then up through the wall. Just by raking out the grout on a horizontal axis, it gives a nice visual flow to the garden. And then when you think about putting in walling, think about the height of them as well. Here, she's done a great job. She's brought it up to perfect seating height, and it's got this really nice timber coping on the top, and I can't see how it's been fixed. No signs of any screws or anything. Really nice attention to detail. And from here, I'm right next to the water feature here, which has been brought right up to eye level on the boundary. I'm not just seeing a blank wall there. And what I really like about this is this garden feels as if it's really in 3D. So she's created lots of different levels right up to the back here. It tears up a real sense of volume as well. And that's why this garden won it. It just goes to show that hard landscaping isn't just about paving, walling and boundaries. There's so much more to it than that. And it's about detailing and design, and it can make or break your garden.
Well, that is the last asparagus I shall cut from this bed. I planted it in April 2011, but then we had a horrible summer that year. Asparagus didn't grow very well. We've had the coldest spring last year, and it just hasn't taken off. And because asparagus lasts so long, if it starts badly, it's unlikely to get better. So I'm cutting my losses. I'm digging it up, and next spring I'll make a new asparagus bed in one of the raised beds, and the virtue of that is it will have extra good drainage. I feel really bad about this. I feel like I'm destroying something that might come good, but I know it's the right decision. And it's, you see, look, do you see how those roots are rotten? They're all shredded. They look like they've been crushed. And that's because they're too wet. I think this is the right thing to do. And next year, in a raised bed, I'll really make sure the drainage is good and it's not shaded at all. But the ground is perfectly good for lots of other vegetables. And for the moment, I've got some brassicas that will love this rich soil. Root rot on a large cabbage or purple sprouting broccoli can cause a lot of damage. So you want really firm roots. And if the soil is firm, they have to work their way in and it anchors them. So always treat a brassica bed as though it was a lawn and tread it over like this and then rake it lightly. Now it's a little bit wet and sticky for this at the moment, but we'll get away with it, I think. Right, let's get them in the ground. This is Romanesco, which I always think of as somewhere between broccoli and cauliflower, with usually with a pointed head. And they can be bigger than purple sprouting broccoli, but smaller than a cauliflower. And the best way to eat them, I think, is very similar to broccoli. I would lightly boil them, heat up some garlic and some chili in a pan with oil, and then toss the Romanesco in that, and they're very good. Dig a deep hole. Plant them nice and deep with some of the stem buried, like that, and then really aggressively firm them in. This is important. You won't damage the roots at all, and if they start life firm, they will grow good and straight and they won't be damaged by wind. Spacing wants to be about 18 inches. I nowadays tend to plant closer than the books will tell you to do. That's because I'd rather have more repeat pickings of smaller plants. If you want a show plant or you've got masses of people to feed, space it further apart, you'll get bigger plants. In an effort to make the asparagus grow better, I've been mulching this for the last few years with an enormous amount of compost, and brassicas love that. So give them plenty of food. This is the perfect moment to be planting out all your winter brassica. But even if you don't grow cabbages or Romanesco, here are some other jobs you can be getting on with this weekend. At this time of year, lily beetles are indulging their voracious appetites, munching through your favourite lilies and any members of the fritillary family. They're bright red, so easy to see. But at the slightest sense of movement, they drop off the plant and lie on their backs and are almost impossible to find on the ground. So creep up on them whilst they're otherwise engaged and grab them, and then dispose of them as you feel fit. To keep your roses flowering as long as possible, it's important to deadhead them regularly. Don't just pull the spent flowers off, but cut back to a side shoot, and this will promote fresh growth with more flowers. In a rainy year like this one, it's quite common for roses to ball, which means that the outer petals get wet and then dry out slightly and trap the flower and stop it opening. Gently tease it apart with your fingers, and often you can rescue the flower and it will open in front of your eyes. Blackbirds have a habit of eating strawberries before they're fully ripe, and the only way to stop them is to put some netting up so they can't get through it. It doesn't have to be a permanent structure. Some posts or canes with the netting stretched over it will do the job properly. But do make sure that the netting is stretched taut, otherwise the birds can get wrapped up and tangled in loose shrouds. Now, this is a group of plants that I never thought that I would grow. And I set off to the Malvern Spring Festival with no intention of buying carnivorous plants, but saw them growing there and sort of fell in love with them. I thought they were incredibly interesting and very practical because they need no looking after at all. All you have to do is stand them in some rainwater. And they catch insects for me in the greenhouse. So they're beautiful, they're fascinating, and they're useful. And I never would have got them if I hadn't been to Malvern this spring. And that, I think, is one of the delights of going to flower shows. You set out with a shopping list of what you're likely to buy, and suddenly you're hit over the head with something new, something you'd never thought of. Carol has gone to Gardener's World Live, looking for planting combinations that will look great in otherwise tricky areas of the garden.
Every week we get loads of letters and emails from people who've got particularly problematic patches in their gardens. Well, I want to find the solutions to some of those problems, and where better to do it than at Gardener's World Live. The question we're asked more than any other is, what can I grow in shade? Now, Emma Truman's letter is typical. She's got one border that's in dense shade. What can she grow there? Well, most of us have got shade in our gardens for at least part of the time. Think of your own borders. For part of the day, they're plunged into shade. Foxgloves are the archetypal solution for just that sort of a place. That's why they put themselves in nature. They love to grow in hedgerows on the edge of woodland, so they're just ideal. In spring, shade is never a problem. There are so many springtime plants that love shady places. But come the summer, it's a bit more difficult. But how about this for a solution? This handsome Campanula latifolia is perfect in a shady spot. And if you want something even more exotic, why not go for this Sarastro? But if, like Emma, you've got somewhere that's shady all the day through, then there are still loads of solutions. On the stand, there's this glorious new lamium called Pink Chablis, and it's ideal for anybody's shady spot. Sometimes it's the soil itself that's seen as a problem. And I suppose the most problematic kind of soil is seen as being heavy clay. I garden on clay myself, and so does one of our viewers, John Dixon, who's written to tell us about his new garden, full of heavy clay. Well, one famous garden that had heavy clay was Barnsdale, home to Gardener's World for many years, and home of Jeff Hamilton. He had a marvellous success story there, and his son, Nick Hamilton, continues his legacy with spectacular results. I reckon he's the bloke to talk to. Nick, roses feature largely on your stand, and they love clay, don't they?
Oh, they do, absolutely love it. And certainly at Barnsdale, we're on heavy clay, and they do fantastically well there.
And when you see wild roses, invariably they're growing in amongst grasses and other sort of herbaceous plants, so that's ideal in the garden.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they can grow all these fantastic plants. Right. I mean, things like the Achillea that we've got over there, and flower all summer long, and the potentilla just keeps going and going and going. I mean, you can't ask for better.
Yeah, they do. Potentilla's the same family as roses too, isn't it? It's lovely. Do you love clay?
Given the choice, I would pick clay every day of the week.
Yeah, me too. Thanks ever so much. Sometimes a beautiful view comes with its own problems. Gillian Edwards lives in Snowdonia and she's written to us to ask what on earth she can grow in her windswept, exposed site, very close to the sea. Well, there's so many things, as long as you bear in mind that you want plants that are specially adapted to that sort of situation. On this stand, there are loads of examples. There's a little spurge here. This is Euphorbia cyperaceus. Right now, it makes this lovely sort of swinging thread right through the stand. Later, it'll have bright lime green flowers that'll bring in the insects from far and wide. Marry it with something like this little white daisy, Erigeron carvinscianus from Mexico. Providing it's not soaking wet during the winter, then it'll survive happily and flower for months on end. Something really spectacular. Eryngiums will cope with mountainside and seaside alike. They've got spectacular flowers and they really give a bit of drama to your dry, sunny situation. Aren't we lucky in Britain? We garden in all sorts of conditions, all sorts of different situations, but providing we always bear in mind one principle: choosing plants that are going to love the sort of conditions that we can offer them. We really can't go wrong. The moral of the story is go with the flow. Choose the right plant for the right place.
Now, the big pots that I put in the four centres of the jewel garden have done their stuff for this year. They've served very well through winter and into spring, and now they're dying back. And I need to revamp them. This is a good time to refresh all containers to take you for the rest of the summer. And big pots are quite tricky to plant up. And the secret is to make a statement. Really go for it. And to do that, you need to choose plants that have the panache to not only make one statement, but to go on making it right through into autumn. I do think that if you're using a large pot, it should be based around a centerpiece that is big and dramatic. It needs height, ideally at least as high as the pot itself. And I'm using a canna called Wyoming. And this has got really nice chocolate-coloured veined foliage, which will mix in with the background, and also superb bright orange flowers. Of course, I haven't bought this. I've had this plant for years and kept it over winter and just grown it on in the greenhouse in the last month or so and hardened it off so it's ready to go outside. And the idea is to recycle as much as possible. So there's the centerpiece, like that. Cannas are hungry, thirsty plants. You can't really overwater or overfeed them. The biggest mistake is to let them get too dry. Now, around the outside, I want to have some dahlias. This is an orange dahlia called David Howard. It has a really lovely orange flower with just a touch of apricot to it. There we go, 3 David Howard. See, I already think that's starting to look good. And of course, they're crammed in far too tight in conventional spacing terms, but that doesn't matter. We want to maximize the effect from this one pot. Now, if I'm happy with that, I'll take these out of the pot. And these are plants that I've had for a number of years, and there's no reason why I can't have them for quite a few more years yet, and take cuttings from them to make new plants. It's absolutely essential, if you want a big, dramatic display from a big container, to give it the nourishment it needs. Lots of goodness. Next step is to have something that will trail a little bit. And I've got nasturtiums, and this is a trailing mix, grown from seed. Now, the only thing that one has to worry about with nasturtiums is that they get a little bit vigorous at the expense of flowers. Traditionally, if you wanted nasturtiums to flower really well, you potted them up into the sweepings of the potting shed floor, i.e. practically dust. This is going into a strong compost, but because it's being shared by other more vigorous plants, it should restrict the growth of the nasturtium enough to promote flowering. And then there, right against the edge. And the final element of the mix, which is a rich red flower, a dianthus. And this particular one is an unnamed variety bought from a petrol station. And that red will add a little bit of richness to the base to stop it getting too orange and chocolate. And the last piece of advice I think I'd give is when you're planting up a big container, it can feel like the choices are limitless. Work out what you want and stick to it. Don't try and chuck a bit of everything in. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. Next time, you've learned something. Well, that's it for today. Bye-bye. Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. I often think that the gardening year is a bit like a journey up a mountain. And in spring, you're taking on the lower slopes and you're busy and you're preparing and you're making progress. But now, this is the summit. This is what we do all our gardening for. So it's important not just to be endlessly busy, doing jobs, trying to master the garden, but for once, just stop, take it in, and enjoy it. For many people at this time of year, verdant lawns don't just conjure up a relaxing midsummer garden, but also lawn tennis. Joe has been to Wimbledon to meet the team who take care of their precious grass.
Every single day, every single court, the guys will be walking over every square inch just to make sure that everything's pristine and perfect for day one.
Carol is in Cornwall, meeting a couple who grow a large collection of honeysuckles from all over the world, including our own beautifully fragrant native varieties.
It really is the scent. It's so evocative of a summer's evening.
And as well as sitting back and relishing my garden, I will be doing a few jobs, including taking some softwood cuttings to make new plants for free. This piece of the garden has, for the last 20 years or so, been the spring garden. And now we're in summer, it's completely done its stuff. It's spent. But I've taken the hedge out that lined right along its length. It's like taking the wall off a room. So now it can't be ignored. I've got to see it. So, as well as being a spring garden, I want this to become a summer garden, sharing the same shady woodland conditions. It's amazing to think that just a few months ago, this was spangled with jewel-like flowers. There were crocuses and tulips and hellebores, and it felt precious. Now it looks as though it's been trashed. That isn't the case. Everything is fine. What I am trying to do is create space and see where there are gaps where I can plant for summer. I'm going to start with a shrub. This is Hydrangea arborescens discolor sterilis. And it will cope with dappled shade. And if I let it grow, there'll be a mass of small flowers. If I prune it harder, we'll get fewer but bigger flowers. And depending on how it looks, I can make that decision later. One of the features of this bit of the garden is that it's full of rubbish. Presumably over the centuries, it's fairly near the house, people have just chucked the rubbish out and it's accumulated. So when you plant anything, you often dig up bits of pottery and all the broken bits and pieces that were just hurled out the back door. And there's a piece of pot, glazed on one side and not on the other. It's probably a mixing bowl from the kitchen with a glazed interior. Now, hydrangeas like a free draining soil, but if your soil is very heavy or very light, leaf mould is ideal or a bit of garden compost added to it. What I'm going to do is, before I firm it in, I'm going to give it a really good soak. And because the soil will be a bit loose, it'll absorb it better. And then when the water's drained down, I'll come back and firm the soil around it. Right, while that's absorbing, let's go on to the next layer. I'm adding an anemone. This is Anemone hufensis Hadspen variety. It comes from China, and it will flower with pink flowers later in summer, August, September, even on into October. And it's a tough plant. Will be quite happy in this dappled shade. And I would say that when you're planting an area like this, it's probably better to find a plant you really like and buy half a dozen of it and spread it through the area, rather than just dotting ones and twos of 10 different types of plant. And I want it to work its way down along the path. Over the years, it's quite common for Gardener's World to have been rested whilst Wimbledon has been on. So we thought it appropriate that Joe should go along and see not just how they prepare the famous courts, but also the huge amount of floral display that accompanies the tennis.
It was a year ago on this very court that history was made when Andy Murray finally lifted the men's Wimbledon trophy and Britain gained another sporting hero. In the UK alone, 17 million viewers tuned into that match, and very shortly the eyes of the world will once again descend on these famous grounds. But it's not just the tennis players who'll be feeling the pressure. The gardening team have to time the floral displays to perfection. The All England Lawn Tennis Club is keen to promote the idea that the Wimbledon tournament is like tennis in an English garden. The man whose job it is to turn that idea into reality is head gardener Martin Faulkner. Hello, Martin. Nice to meet you. Nice to see a hands-on head gardener.
Yeah, I like to get my hands dirty now and then.
Yeah, I can see. But your role is different from most head gardeners' jobs, really, because it's all about the exhibit, isn't it? It's about trying to get it ready for the day.
Yeah, that's right. We aim for them 2 weeks of the year when the tournament starts. So we're geared up to be ready for that day.
So the pressure's really on, though.
The pressure's on, but you know we have to do that with bringing in lots of colour, trees, containers, thousands of perennials and bedding plants that come in, just to give a big impact on the site for the public coming in to not just see the tennis, but I think they also come to see the flowering.
And there's a strong colour theme here. Well, you're wearing it, aren't you? Purple and green.
Purple and green, yeah.
Green's easy enough.
Green's easy, it's the purple, but you know, with salvias and campanias, but always looking for something that little bit different year on year, and we learn from things that do and don't work.
And have you got a whole team of gardeners that work with you?
Yeah, I've got a crew of 8 other guys. They work hard and keep this place looking good.
So have you got lots to do?
Plenty to do, Joe, so if you want to give us a hand, come on.
I'll give you a hand, but as long as I can have a go on centre court.
Oh, I don't think that'll be allowed.
Just a little rally.
We can try.
A little knock-up. This is such an iconic image for me, of The horticulture of Wimbledon, it's amazing. Virginia creeper, Boston ivy.
Yeah.
What do you call it?
We call it Partho. We've shortened down the Latin name to Partho between the lads, so...
Partho, as in Parthenocissus?
Exactly, yeah.
I bet in the autumn it must go mad colour, must be absolutely
it goes
stunning.
Stunning bronzes, reds, and just, it's just amazing. It is really good. And then it's clearing the leaves afterwards.
I love the red tinges in there already.
Yeah.
Beautiful, isn't it? So what are your top tips for growing this?
If you want to keep it contained, then just keep trimming it. And once it's established, plenty of water and it's away.
We're getting it at ground level, but I see around the corner there, he's got the cherry picker out
that's right,
to get it up around the window.
Exactly, the only way.
It's an unbelievable amount of work, really, when you think about it, isn't it?
But the Virginia creeper isn't the most famous horticultural feature at Wimbledon. The grass courts always take centre stage.
Well, Martin, one thing you're not responsible for are these fantastic courts. Neil, nice to meet you.
How you doing?
Yeah. This is your domain.
Yes.
Inside these courts. They are absolute perfection.
Thank you very much.
I bet you get asked all the time, how do you keep them looking so good?
Having a dedicated team. I have a team of 16 that spend their whole life almost on all of our courts, and every single day, every single court, the guys will be walking over every square inch just to make sure that everything is as pristine and as perfect as it possibly can for day one.
And do you lay them every year?
Yes, we pretty much, after the championships, we shave the surface off, go back to the soil, we re-level it, reseed.
And for the gardeners at home, what grass seed do you use? Is it something that people could grow at home?
Yes, I mean, the variety that we use, we're 100% ryegrass now. It's just we select different cultivars that are good for tennis. So for us, it's all about wear tolerance and drought tolerance grasses. But yeah, the rye grasses that we use is something you can use in everyday gardens.
Right.
My advice would always be plenty of moisture, plenty of feed. If it's growing, cut it.
And use a sharp mower.
Yes,
as well.
always make sure the blades are nice and sharp. It just means that when you cut the grass, it's not tearing it, it's actually cutting it, so the grass then heals quicker, and it just means that you'll get a stronger plant. And you should get a nice
you make
green
it sound
garden.
so simple.
Well,
yeah, Martin, do you ever get involved in the grass itself?
The only thing I do with grass is weed it and take it out.
When 500,000 tennis fans pour through the gates during the 2 weeks of the championships, Martin and his team will blend into the background. But they'll always be on hand to make sure their floral displays are nothing but perfect.
So what about this year then? Andy Murray's going to do it again?
Hopefully he'll do the double. Let's wait and see.
If he does the double, you've got to take some credit for it. Your floral displays would have inspired him.
It might help, you never know.
I think it might help
Take
quite
it
a
in,
lot.
might chill him out a bit.
The herb garden is now growing with real lushness. And this makes it not only a delicious time to eat them, but a really good time to take cuttings. Now, these are softwood cuttings. And the difference between a softwood cutting and, say, a semi-ripe cutting, let alone a hardwood one, is that it's entirely made out of new growth. So you can see here on this rosemary, this growth here has happened in the last few months, and I can bend it without breaking it. And the advantage of softwood cuttings is that they take really quickly and easily. Before you take any cuttings, you need to have a polythene bag, something sharp to cut with, and ideally do it early in the morning. 6 o'clock is perfect because the plant is full of liquid and it just gives you a bit more time to take the cuttings before they start to dry out. And it's the drying out that will kill them. So we're taking just this year's growth there, like that, and immediately put it in the bag, and that will have lots of vigour to put out roots. And if you come over to a plant like this lavender, and it's all herby, but you can do this on any shrub or perennial plant, you can see that is a mass of new growth, and that's perfect cutting material. So, OK, having taken the cutting, you now have to act fast. I've prepared everything so I can be quick about this. And the minute you cut your softwood cutting, it's wilting. And if it wilts too much, it'll die. Now, the first thing we need is good drainage. So I've got extra vermiculite to go in what is a seed mix, because we don't need much nutrition at all. And we have a cutting like that and strip off most of the lower leaves. And the reason why we pull the leaves off is because it'll lose less moisture. And also when the roots do grow, there'll be less demands upon them. These are the leaf nodes, and I'm going to cut that back below a node. And then using a pencil and pop that in like that, and there we go. The great secret of cuttings is that they're not difficult. So give them a go. It will need some kind of protection to keep the moisture in. Pop a couple of supports in like that and put a polythene bag over the top. Check it every few days and then just take the top off, shake it out, any excess water, let air in and put it back, because sometimes with some plants they can rot. Now, this works very well if you want to leave it, but if you are at home and you're around and you've got a little mister, just misting it 2 or 3 times a day will do the trick. And I've got a mist propagator, so I'm going to put this, and I put all my soft cuttings onto the bench where the mist will keep it nice and moist. Now, I've got some cuttings that I took earlier this spring. This is euphorbia. You can see there's nice new growth on that. But a tip is, before you tip it out, just give it a little tug. Gentle. And I can feel a bit of give in that. And that one. Which means that it hasn't developed sufficient roots to get in the soil. So leave that. But this, which says unnamed fuchsia, pull that, and there's a lot of resistance. So if I tip these out, we should see plenty of roots, yes. So they're ready to pot on. And in fact, if I break that open, I've got a nice new plant, lots of roots. And if I plant that out, that will make a little flowering plant by the end of summer. Now, you may not be taking any cuttings this weekend, but here are some other jobs that you can be getting on with. At this time of year, you may notice a mass of small fruits lying on the ground beneath your apple or pear trees. Now, don't worry. This is just nature's way of reducing the burden of ripening too many fruits, and it's known as the June drop. It's also a signal to prune the fruit further. Remove all but 2 fruits from each spur. This way, you will get 2 well-ripened, healthy fruits instead of 4 or 5 small ones. Midsummer is a good time to sow biennials, and these are plants such as foxglove or wallflowers that develop their roots and top growth in the first year and then are ready to flower the following spring and summer. You can sow these directly outside, or as I do, in a pot or seed tray under cover. Scatter the seeds thinly over damp compost, sprinkle some more dry compost over the top, and place somewhere cool to germinate. Gooseberries, red currants and white currants are all particularly susceptible to attack by sawfly at this time of year. The adult lays its eggs at the base of the bush, and when the larvae hatch, they start eating their way up the plant. And if you're not careful, they can completely defoliate it before you really realize anything's wrong. Prune away all the new growth from the center of the bush, leaving an open goblet shape. This will improve ventilation and also means you can see any damage before it gets too bad. When you're clearing a pond of duckweed or any debris, tip it by the side of the water and leave it for a couple of days, and that gives a chance to all the creepy crawlies to go back into the water. And the pond is looking good. But one of the things that has changed this year quite dramatically is the size of the hostas. They're enormous. And that, of course, is because of the wet winter and spring we've had. Saturated ground, and they just grow. And it shows you the conditions that hostas really like. They're bog plants. So if you grow them in a pot, they're likely to be struggling from the outset. And that's when they get hit by slugs and snails. Slugs and snails will always go for plants that are stressed in some way. And I've had lots of letters about them. So, for example, I have a letter here. Dear Monty, apart from being a softie and not wanting to kill the little blighters, I also have pets and a very little inquisitive little grandson, so I'm loath to put down slug pellets. Can you recommend a deterrent? I think nothing will do more to cope with slugs and snails than a really healthy ecosystem in your garden. So if you can make a pond, that does a huge amount of good. It attracts frogs and toads. Lots of hedges, shrubs and trees, that attracts blackbirds and thrushes. All these things eat slugs and snails. And healthy plants growing strongly tend not to be attacked. They're like damaged plants or young ones. Now, the young ones are where you do want to focus a bit of special attention. This is the area where we put plants that have come from the greenhouse, are growing on under some protection with the cold frames, and then are hardening out on that side. And we try to keep this area as a slug and snail-free zone. And it's got hard surfaces. We use gravel, which is dry and abrasive, and they don't like that. We put down the occasional beer trap. And more importantly, we check regularly, at least once a week, under every pot and container. So I suppose the moral is, put your energy into a slug-free zone, which can be quite small, just a couple of feet by a couple of feet, and use that to protect plants that really need it. Now, continuing a look at the plants that have shaped our gardens, and also the people who've given time, passion and expertise to developing them, Carol went down to Cornwall to look at a plant whose fragrance is one of the high notes of midsummer.
As Titania, the queen of the fairies, says in Midsummer Night's Dream, so doth the woodbine, the sweet honeysuckle, gently entwist. There can be no more evocative scent than that of our native honeysuckle. It's the whole essence of romance and softness. And yet, it's an incredible toughie. In the most inhospitable corners, in hedgerows and gardens, its twisting, twining stems burst out over pavements and pathways to share its wondrous flowers and their exquisite perfume. Liz and Charlie Pridham have spent 30 years bringing together honeysuckles from across the world to create a fascinating collection. Did you initially set out to grow honeysuckles?
No, but the one plant, apart from a couple of yew trees and some apple trees that were here, was a honeysuckle. And it was growing. And we were having great deal of difficulty growing anything else.
Yeah.
So that was what started us with honeysuckles.
So it gave you the clue to what was going to
they
grow.
were going to grow.
I mean, were there any particular problems with the soil?
With the mining around, we've got tin and copper, but we've also got nickel and cadmium and arsenic.
Yeah.
And none of these things a lot of plants like very much. So it's great to have a group of plants that you know will cope with just about anything you throw at them.
But it's not just their ease of cultivation, is it, that really makes you love them?
No, it's the scent. It really is the scent. It's so evocative of a summer's evening.
There are honeysuckles everywhere, aren't there?
There are. This one is Lanicera italica, and it's very early. It's nearly going over, but it starts in April.
As early as that?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But it is very scented. And it's nowhere near as big as our native honeysuckle.
So it'd be the perfect sort of plant if you're in a town garden.
Yes. One of the ways you can tell that it's Italica is by its leaves. The leaf behind the flower is perfoliate.
That means the stem just goes right the way through it.
Yes, that's right.
Just surrounds it.
Surrounds it.
This is a real honeysuckle bower. Just look at this. It's beautiful.
Isn't it lovely? Yes. It's Linistrua belgica, early Dutch. This one's starting now, early June, and it takes over from the Italica.
Paraclaminum is our own native honeysuckle, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yes.
I mean, our hedges in Devon are thronged with it, but they're always cream and yellow.
They are down here in Cornwall as well, but as you go further east in the country, they start to get pinker and pinker and pinker. And if you go across into the near continent on Belgium and Holland, then they're really quite crimson. But they're all the same plant. When you have some of these long shoots here, if you just nip them back, then they'll make 2 new shoots there and they will flower, so you can really extend the season.
This must have been an old orchard.
Yes, it is, yes. This is an old apple tree.
Yeah, and a fine host for this beautiful honeysuckle, but this is quite different, isn't it?
Yes, this is Linistrua japonica, and it's a really gorgeous, glossy-leafed evergreen.
But it's quite rampant, isn't it?
Very vigorous, yes. Ideal for covering up unsightly things in your garden. And the scent is glorious. Yeah. It really is. It fills this bit of the garden.
It's worth having an old apple tree, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's not just us who find the scent of honeysuckle so alluring, is it?
Well, they're not doing it for us, that's for sure, but we're the beneficiaries. They're obviously doing it to attract their pollinators, which in the case of our honeysuckles are moths, particularly the hawk moths. And when you see them in the evenings all over the plants.
And that's when the plant begins to pump out its perfume, isn't it?
Indeed. They've actually timed it for the working person to come home from work, and that's when the scent starts, you know, ideal for commuters. Much as we would like them to be, not all honeysuckles are scented. A lot of the North American honeysuckles that have those lovely orange and red flowers that the gardeners love so much, they rely on hummingbirds. The hummingbirds lacking a sense of smell, the plants have over time decided not worth making any perfume, and sadly they don't. But people have been trying for years to get that red colour with a scent, and they've not got there yet. But if you come into the garden and you see our native honeysuckle doing its thing, filling the garden with scent, probably isn't a better plant that you could grow in a British garden.
Now, I would agree with Charlie that every garden, every single garden in this country should have a honeysuckle. This time of year, they are a complete joy. Now, this particular honeysuckle was the one that I cut back earlier this spring. Cut it back to here, because it was a complete tangled mass and you couldn't get past it without brushing against it. Where I cut it, there's quite vigorous new growth now. And on this side, where I haven't cut it, you've got the flowers, showing how it flowers on the previous year's growth. So in a year or maybe 2's time, it'll be back to luxuriant, easy growth that's vaguely manageable. Well, that's it for today. And I would just say again that for most of the year, we're also busy trying to make our garden look as good as possible, trying to keep it tidy and organised and grow all these lovely plants. But this weekend, just take a moment. And remember, this is the top of the year, so look out from here and relish the view. Till then, bye-bye.